Welcome to the Legacy Through Land podcast, where we're dedicated to empowering you on your journey to land ownership and management. I'm Tyler Markham, your host, and each week we'll dive deep into the world of land investing, management strategies, and the transformative experiences tied to owning your very own piece of dream dirt. With our expert guests, inspiring stories, and actionable advice, we're committed to helping you become a better land manager, hone your investing skills, and start building your family's legacy through land. Now, let's dive into this week's episode. We hope you'll enjoy. All right. Welcome to episode 62 of the Legacy Through Land podcast. Yes, I checked on my phone just now, okay? That 61 was last week. 62 episodes in, and I still don't remember what episode it is, so it's just definitely an episode, like I always tell people. Today, I have got, I hope, one of my new best friends on the podcast. Like I always tell my listeners, if I'm not excited about the guest, they're probably not going to be on here. And I have spent the last few hours this morning honing in my excitement for today's guest, Mr. Cody Idol. If you don't know that name, please leave this platform right now and go do yourself a favor and delete social media. Figure him out, then you're allowed back in. Cody, thank you for being with me today.
Hey, man. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here.
Well, that makes two of us because we've already chatted offline, and I had to stop him multiple times to say, don't be giving me these goods. Do not give me the goods without this being recorded. So I am very confident today is going to be good. And speaking of good, Cody, please forgive the lack of inches of antlers I have behind me, okay? Please forgive us all. But no, actually, I think
I've learned the display.
You're not just about inches. I've learned that. So we're going to talk about a lot of inches of antler today and what has led us to today and being able to talk. But I do happen to know there is a little more to your story than just growing up around deer. And I have seen the avid outdoorsman and I would say lifestyle creator that you are. So we'll tickle our listeners' ears. But if you guys have never heard big stories of whitetails and big stories of what deer and big deer can do to people and crazy stories, consider yourself warned, because today we have some juice to give. Mm-hmm. Cody, I want to start out with, just start from the top. Where is home for you? Where do you call home? And if people don't know who you are, kind of give us your version of the backstory of what does the Idol name mean in the outdoor world?
Oh, first of all, no comment. Just kidding. I was telling him all this stuff he wants me to go over. I'm like, we'll talk about it. No, I mean, to kind of separate the Idol name in the outdoor world a little bit, because that's a little bit bigger of a bite, but the short on me, I guess, is grew up in Montana, born and raised, lived there until I was, I think, 32 or 33, and I live down in South Florida right now. I'm actually, just outside of Naples, and which kind of goes against the grain of probably what people view.
Montana to Florida. Yeah, that's a big one.
Of course, I don't, it's interesting because I don't work here, do anything here. I just have my place here. Pretty much everything else I do, I travel for, and I do travel a ridiculous amount. But yeah, that's the ins and outs of where I started, where I am now. As far as I'm always careful when I jump into, like, what does the Idol name mean? Because first and foremost, it's important to note that, like, in my view of all of this, my dad did something that was very special in the outdoor world. He lit a torch. He started a legacy. He built something. And I don't exactly know what I am doing in the big, well, as far as actually, let me word it like this. What I told him, as I said, you lit a torch, you did something special. They were during the Trailblazer days when it was multiple of the names that literally blazed the path for where we all are now. There was the Winsels and the Fred Bears and there was so many incredible, basically frontiersmen that came along. And I said, Dad, you lit a torch. If that proverbial torch has been handed to me, first and foremost, it's just an honor to hold the torch. I'm not making any claim to, like, if I can perpetuate, carry, tell the stories, I'd love to do it, but I don't put any stake in like me being a trailblazer or anything like that. It's just an honor to be a part of it. As a kid, I read the books and I followed my heroes and I looked up to all these like legendary outdoorsmen and stuff. And I don't know if I ever pegged that I'd even have a chance to know any of them, let alone, write and be in shows and do all this stuff. It's just been an honor. And I really, for me, if I had to encapsulate it into one direction that I want to go, is if I can play a role in preserving hunting all around history and whitetail history, because I fear that there'll be a day when a couple generations down the way, if we don't preserve where all this came from and the stories and the history, it gets lost somewhere. And all you have is, and I'm one of them, but you have a bunch of YouTubers and influencers. And then you have young people that are getting involved in the great outdoors, and the only reference point they have is, someone with a GoPro, and it just doesn't preserve any of the heritage or the history of what made this great to begin with. So that's a long-winded answer to say that, like, that is my hope anyway with the torch, is to carry it in that direction. And if I get one step in my lifetime, great. If I can go further than that and I hand it off to somebody else, but just any way that I can play a role in preserving, hunting and whitetail heritage and history. That's kind of what I broad view, 20,000 foot view of like what the Idol name has progressively kind of done throughout the years.
Yep.
So
honestly, it means so much to hear you say that, because what I know is so common with that stance, Cody, if you will, is that it's obvious you've been raised by great leaders, and you've had a great leader and a mentor in your dad to watch. And when we think of people that, I always hated the statement when someone would say, oh, well, they came from money, or, oh, if I had their parents' money, I'd do this, this, or that. Or if I had their dad's fame, I'd do this, this, or that. And you just think the wrong kid or whomever will take that and say, well, we've arrived somewhere. I'm entitled. All the path's been paved for me. And what I've just heard you wrestle with, Cody, and why I know that's an uncomfortable, ideology for you to have to wrestle with, is because with that torch, with carrying that torch, there's an enormous amount of responsibility that comes with it, where you have a duty to do good, to see well, to continue to pave a path, because my assumption is you would believe and agree you haven't arrived anywhere. The journey is going.
Exactly.
Your dad and others before him and in that same generation, the thing that I'm excited to talk about through today is, yes, these big names have paved a path for it to be an option to have a future in this. They've paved that path. But with that comes the great responsibility of continuing to pave and trudge forward.
Yeah.
Because the path stops if you think we arrived somewhere. You stop paving new trails. You stop pushing the envelope and reshaping the trajectory of storytelling, where it goes. And with your dad, that kind of becomes, you said it earlier, your dad doesn't use a computer. Well, with the advent and all this invention of social media and technology, we can love it or hate it, but look at the ability to continue to tell stories.
Yeah.
So I intimately respect how tough that is for you to wrestle with, because it means you carry an enormous burden on your shoulder to see it well, to do well.
Yeah.
And with that is a lot of work. It's not sitting back and riding on the coattail. It's a lot of work on the front line. And that means a lot to hear. For people who kind of maybe don't realize it, like you basically spent your childhood around the Mount Rushmore, to me, the Mount Rushmore of whitetail history. And I'm curious, like, at what age for you, Cody, would you have realized or maybe started to put some of the thoughts together in your head of, like, my dad wasn't just a deer hunter, but I think a lot would argue he was the preeminent whitetail historian. I mean, I think that would be comfortable for people to say. When did you ever feel like that kind of was what it was? And maybe it wasn't until way later.
Honestly, it really wasn't until way later. He, despite all the things that he did, I heard more about him as a kid through like his friends and other people. And what was crazy is we grew up in my brother and I grew up in a very remote, backwoods place in Montana. Went to I used to ride my 4-wheeler to school, and you'd
fit in West Virginia then. You'd have been fine there.
But the K through the school that I went to up until almost high school, the K through 8 was one building, one hallway, and there was like 90 kids from K through 8 there. And you add that to no social media back then, and I'm not even sure until I was in high school if we even had a TV in the house. And my dad was one of those old Southern types that he just didn't talk about it. Now, I knew there was something different because I grew up hunting with him. And, fortunately, I got to do Africa and Alaska and Canada yearly and grow up in Montana hunting with him. But I also was the guy back in the day that I hunted in like a 1970s wool camo jacket that my dad had, and the same old pair of pants and a ball cap. And I still have the same 270 that I've hunted with since I was 12 in Montana. During those days, not only did he not talk about it, but I had no perspective on the industry or the outdoor world other than like I hung out with him and like Jim and Dick Cabela and, Johnny Morris and stuff like that. Like those were just like the guys back then with him. But I didn't even really grasp who I was around. And Bill Jordan and honestly, it was much later. It's like I actually got into it in kind of the broader social media space first. And then I started taking the more historical dive, like, okay, I'm going to uncover everything I can. And this thing has been like a well that's like every time I get to a new level and I think I've hit the bottom of the well, I realize I'm not even close and there's just more to learn. And so, and I heard something the other day, just one other note on that, like our generation that really stuck with me. Like, I assume you're close to my age somewhere. I'm born in
37.
37. Okay. I've turned 39 in like a month. So we're millennials. Something I heard that really stuck with me. Millennials are the only generation that knew life before and after the technology. The generation before us grew up without it. We started without it, but then saw the progression into it. And the generation after us doesn't know life without it. So when we talk about the responsibility, like we're the only generation that has a foot on both sides, and like we appreciate and remember what it was like before. We're also awed and blown away by what its capabilities are and this and that, but we have a respect for that middle. And that's why I fear that like the next generation doesn't have the same like pull towards the history. I've sat down with 20 people over the last year that would sit there and tell me things, people, places, everything. Here's these stories that I'm like I get like goosebumps thinking about it. This is my dog.
You're good.
And I just get goosebumps thinking about it though, because I'm like, this is what actually pushes me towards the social media side. I was like, these stories have to be told. And some of them are older where I'm like, hey, if you don't share this, it's important to all of us. And if you don't share it, it's never going to be known. And so going back to the coattails thing, when I first started, what's funny is when I first started taking off, people are like, oh, he's probably, riding his dad's coattails. I was like, well, none of you said anything 10 years ago when I started doing this and no one was paying attention yet.
So tell us, Cody, if we're going to play dumb, what do you do? What are you doing? What is your day to day? And you don't have to get way into the weeds, but like, there's the guys that embody, this is what I do for a living. And I've started to like be more uncomfortable with those words because I'm like, well, for a living, I'm a dad. For a living, I'm a husband. For a living, I'm trying to be a believer in Christ. I'm trying to be a buddy. But to support my family, because living to me is not what I do for a job. Anyway, what do you do? What brings money into the Idol household for you if it's this creative aspect?
Yeah, well, I've been an art broker for a long time. My younger brother, Cody Idol, is a very well-known oil painter out west. We have an art gallery in Whitefish, Montana, and I represent about 3 different artists independently, so I do direct-to-client. So I've done that for a long time. I broker, stuff like the General, the $1 Million Deal. I've done a lot of other antler deals.
He didn't do that. Pause. We'll catch that later.
Yeah, we'll call circle
Spoiler
back.
alert.
But so I do a like kind of high-end brokering.
Which would have been, if people don't know you, that would have been like 1 of 5 guesses someone would come up with, a guy inundated in the outdoors that he would broker art. Like, yeah, sure. It makes total sense, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what's funny too is that's where like that's actually one of the things that was the big bridge for Josh and I. But I guess before I get to that, there's a lot closer of a relationship between like the high-end art world and the high-end antler brokering world, which you could probably guess some of them. But the other thing is, I'm co-owner of the OG brand with Josh, and this sounds crazy. I never thought I'd say this, but social media is significant. Monetization on various platforms and stuff is significant. And, my dad was a big entrepreneur. I grew up watching that too. So I've always got, about 4 or 5 different things that I have irons in the fire, investments. And, but like the beautiful thing that I can say now is I get to wake up every day and go about the path the way I want to. So I live in Florida. I don't work here. I don't have any other ties other than, my place. And, I've got my daughter and, but over the last 2 years, last year, I had almost 100 flights throughout the year. I went to all 50 states and 4 different countries and, went to shows all over and recently started attending the shows as like a featured guest. And that kind of transition just recently happened. And yeah, man, it's really hard to put into words. I feel so thankful and blessed because I get to do it because I love it now, and not because I have to do anything. So,
yeah, it's amazing that you've earned the right. And I'll tell you the words that I didn't know existed were the 2 words serial entrepreneur. And I think that's what would well describe Cody. You've got a lot of irons in the fire, but as a fellow entrepreneur, I like to call myself a serial entrepreneur. I've got things going on, probably not quite 100 flights in 50 states, but hey, we'll all get there. But so circle back to kind of, what do you think when we talk about, obviously you're carrying the torch for this incredible responsibility to be able to tell the stories that I'm going to maybe put words in your mouth that you feel could have been missed through these eras where you just said we're the millennial era. And I intimately feel that we did see the previous way of telling stories, which was to sit on the front porch with your grandpa or whomever and just listen. And that was it. And you would that was it. You didn't know the power of this story could have been told in a different way and reached millions and millions of ears and eyes. Mm-hmm. Now we see it at the tail end of our millennialism of growing up. And like even just my own grandpa, for example, the things I wish I had sat and just videoed him talk about that aren't there anymore. They're just not, are what makes me feel deeply what you're saying. When we go back to your dad, like, what do you think made your dad obsessed with the story behind antlers instead of, just the inches? What do you think from your own perspective now, and maybe you still wrestle with it, but what do you think made him obsessed?
Well, there's kind of two big aspects that I really like. One he is, if you don't know, he's an artist, and he's so much more of an artist than he is on that other side of the brain. He has such a unique perspective on how he sees the woods and how he saw the frontier as his perception was of it. I mean, you go walk in the woods with this guy for 5 minutes, and you're gonna be like, something's different. Like what he notices, how he does it, what draws him, and he just had a different view. But then you add to the fact that he grew up in a place in North Carolina back in the day that didn't even have deer, and he was so ate up with the outdoors that he had a trap line. Taught himself how to do taxidermy. He had falcons and owls. He did, that he trained. Like he did all this interesting stuff. And then he was a wildlife biology major at NC State, and got draft letters, offers to go to the Dallas Cowboys and stuff from there, and had no interest. It was like he graduated in 1969, goes back to the family farm, packs up his Ford Bronco in 69, and drives straight from High Point, North Carolina to Anchorage, Alaska, takes the Pacific Coast Highway. And back then, the last 1,500 miles up through Canada and up into Alaska, there was a dirt road, and just went and started working in a taxidermy shop. Then shortly thereafter, opened his own taxidermy shop, then started guiding and outfitting. And then it just goes from there. He was called to something of that frontier it was like the kid that read, even go back in older times, the kid that read about what was west of the Mississippi before we knew what was out west. It was magical. It was awe-inspiring. They wondered what could be there. What species of animal have we never seen in plant, and what kind of, adventure awaits out there. So there's a sense of that. And, you combine that with his artistic view of how he does everything. It was really interesting, though. Basically, everything he wanted to do back then was something that really hadn't been done the way that he wanted to do it. So in a funny way, it's like, if you ask him, he's like, I let the adventure take me from one thing to the next. But everybody that views the story is like, okay, yeah, but a lot of us did that, but we didn't end up doing all the things that you did. But I think he's just the combination of that artistic side with the awe-inspired desire to go to the next frontier, mixed with, the guy is as dedicated and passionate as it gets to the things that he loves. And so you've never seen someone that'll, and he's, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but the guy can just,
I love this.
The guy can just, it's like, he did all the big monuments out in front of Cabela's and Bass Pro and all that. But he came home from Alaska after being up there doing taxidermy. He's like, I want to do art now. And he was 35 and just taught himself how to paint and sculpt. And not long later, he was doing the biggest monuments in the United States and creating paintings, then taught my brother how to paint, who became one of the most well-known Western oil painters in the United States. And it's but he did that with taxidermy. He did that with when they started, he had the idea to start North American Whitetail magazine, goes to David Morris, and they say, that sounds great. And then, they're like, do you want to write? And he's like, I'm not really a writer. And they're like, well, we don't have anybody else to write, So then this is kind of kicks it. When I say he's led from one thing to the next, it's they started right around in the early 80s there, and he was already collecting, but was, earlier in the game of collecting. And not only does he go on to write over 200 articles for North American Whitetail, we won't even talk about that he killed 8 different deer that have been on the cover. But we lived in Seeley Lake, Montana, and they would get a call hey, so-and-so just killed a 250 in Iowa, and my dad, they want him to write the story. And it got to where, all the people that were calling and all that, they didn't want anybody else but him to write the story. But talk about getting on the front line as a collector too. It's like he was traveling to either by plane or truck, but he was traveling to every big deer that surfaced that they wanted to write about or feature. So that's all he did for years was like, and that's during that times when he goes and buys the hole in the horn and the wrath buck and the Illinois roadkill. And, we had the general sitting in our living room at one point when he acquired them for Cabela's back then. And I mean, so it was so normal to him. I can't hardly bring up one of the old giants where he's like, oh yeah, I picked that one up there, or I had this there, or we had to move your crib because we needed the corner for in your in your room. So
think of it this way, Cody. What you're telling the listener, your dad is what, and I'm just going to be straight up. Most people listening that are dreamers, they don't have the balls to do it. They don't actually have and I don't mean that the wrong way. I don't want that to upset anyone, but there's something that I've known about me, and I am not comparing your dad and myself at all, but there's this thing that I have where if I have like 2% of the data of something, and as long as I'm convinced it's a good idea, I'll just do it.
Right. I
don't have any of the rest figured out. I never do. I'm a trailblazer, and it fires me up to hear about guys that are real trailblazers. I would call myself an aspiring trailblazer. Think of what you said earlier. Your dad graduates, you said, from NC State.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, this is what I'm going to do. I mean, I'm butchering this, but he goes to Alaska. It's like, well, there's a lot of mystery behind what could be there. And then rather than just wonder what could be there, I'm just going to go figure it out. So many people would be like, yeah, after I graduate college, I have a dream of doing this, this, and that. And guess where that dream usually goes? In the coffin with them. They don't ever do it. Your dad has this incredible pedigree of doing what he said he's dreamed of doing.
Mm-hmm.
He just decides to do it. And look how comfortable that is for Cody today, because it's been normalized in your upbringing that dreamers can be doers. They
right.
can. You just don't have to die with the dream. Your dad's not going to die with a lot of what ifs, And how many guys will be able to say that? All those social reels you see about how many regrets you take to your grave, and you never regret doing too much. You always regret doing too little. Your dad's not probably going to die with a lot of what ifs.
No. I mean, and he used to say that, he used to joke as I grew up. He's like, yeah, because had his painting easel in the studio, and he'd come. It was my favorite place to go, by the way, when I was a kid, is get off the school bus and get back and go to the studio that was like a museum. But for a kid that loved, I mean, there's everything from antlers to fossils and crazy taxidermy and art and all that. For me, it was like I got to go to the museum every day after school. But he used to joke. He's like, yeah, one of these days you may just find me keeled over next to my easel, and I'm going to paint till I die kind of thing. And when I was younger, I'd be like, Dad, don't say stuff like that. And he's like, no, I mean that in the best kind of way. And he said that. He said, I've done everything I've ever wanted to do. And he said, on top of that, he's almost 80. He's like, I only had one real job in my life when I was 18. And since then, he's done this trailblazing entrepreneurial route. So he's successfully done, over 60 years without ever having to get involved in a job.
I love it. I love it. And think of all this trailblazing that he's done, all of this leading from the front that he has done. Just think of the ripple effect that has come from it. How many lives and how many different trajectories have been changed because of his boldness to lead from the front. I want to ask you, while we're in this think tank here about kind of your dad and his story, which will probably overlay the rest of our conversation. Do you think there's one deer or one story that kind of changed everything for him? If you can identify something was maybe a linchpin?
Well, there's the origin story type. There was a deer from BC that was the first head he ever bought, and I have a picture of it I can send you, that lit a fire for him because it was the first one. He got the experience of acquiring it, being awed by it. And, back then it was a 170s, I believe, mid 170s. from North Carolina. He had barely even seen a deer, and this thing was just like blew his mind, but it also gave him the bug. It like lit the spark. That was the first head. But if you're gonna go with what we call he coined the whitetail fraternity. If you're gonna go with what the whitetail fraternity would say, it would have to be the hole in the horn. Okay. Because I kind of tell people that like my dad and the hole in the horn, they play tennis with each other's story. They're synonymous with one another in making each other on a grand scale kind of thing. And so, he obviously wasn't the one that found it in the wild, but, he bought the hole in the horn from that Kent, Ohio club up there, the hunting club.
Can you tell us, Cody, because I've obviously seen articles, heard things, but could you give us kind of it doesn't have to be the full underground layer of the story, but what is the story of the hole in the horn buck?
So the story is that he's the number 2 non-typical in the world. And he's 328 and change. The story,
Jeez.
the story, the kind of peanut shell story is that the leading belief is that he was hit by a train, and he went to found on the tracks, was put in this hunting club up in Kent, Ohio, the Kent Canadian.
What time frame? What time frame would this be?
Exactly when he got hit, I think he spent it would have been late 50s, early 60s, I think, when he was found.
Okay.
Don't quote me exactly on that. I've never gone back to, I've been told in the past, and I'm forgetting the date now when he was actually found, but he spent a lot of years in this hunting club there up on the wall. And he had this defining hole through he's got stuff going everywhere, but he had this defining hole going through one of his drop tines with junk on it. And, the leading belief early on was that when he got hit by the train, he was supposedly found up underneath this mild fence on the open cut wire side, and that there was a wire running through that drop tine. Other people say it looks just like a 22 hole. And then even others have said in the Kent Canadian Club, he wouldn't sit right on the wall because he was heavier on one side. So they drilled a hole and ran a wire through. And it's one of those things that people will argue about till they're blue in the face.
That's what's cool about it, though. That's what's cool, because we don't have ChatGPT is not going to go clear this up for you.
Yeah. So then it sits there for many years, and my dad, he's also had the good fortune of naming, he named the general, he named the hole in the horn, he named the Illinois roadkill. But he jokes about, he's we'd never really paid any mind until we started making deer famous to naming deer that were not because if it's taken by a hunter, they're going to say the name of the hunter, that's the name of the deer. But so they came up with the hole in the horn. And, but anyway, long story short, he goes
so
there.
It was found, though. You're saying, obviously, they think it was hit by a train. This deer was found. It wasn't ever claimed to be harvested by someone.
Yeah.
It was found by this hunt club.
Yeah, somebody there, old story I was told, somebody that actually walked the tracks every day going to work found it walking to work one day. And what was interesting, up until this time, there were no hunter-killed 300-inch deer. And during a similar time frame, the Missouri Monarch and the hole in the horn come out, which are both over 300. So again, the shorter version, because you could make a whole show on this. This is where it gets really interesting. So Fred Goodwin actually had a chance to buy it years prior.
He was my next note. So look at you.
Yeah. So but back then and Fred was the premier guy and didn't have much competition and nobody else was doing it back then. So he went around and got all the biggest stuff. But different times, right? He walks in there, wants the hole in the horn, not named that yet, but wants that deer. And they wanted $1,000 for it. And he said he'd never paid that much for a deer, and he actually passed on it. So cut forward back to early 80s, because they had already started North American whitetail. My dad gets this story of this big deer up there. He drives all the way out from Sealy Lake, Montana to Kent, Ohio.
Jeez.
And goes into this little tavern, and the guy takes it down off the wall, and he sits there for like an hour and scores it, or however long it was. And in his own notes, he came up with 346, right at 346. And so then the guy comes back and says, like, hey, what'd you get? And my dad's like, I don't even want to say this number because I don't know if it's 100%, but I don't want to, if I this would be the new world record. And so, you know, he just said, I'm not 100% sure yet. I'll have to go through it all again. But then the guy said, well, I'd sell it, but I want $12,000 for it. So back in the early 80s, he paid $12,000 for it and buzzed home to Montana with it in the back seat. And,
and you know, let's quantify here. In the 80s, it doesn't matter what you're going to buy for $12,000. That's a lot of money. Still, that's a lot of money. Like that's, we're talking about a crazy big deer, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, Cody. Well, you and I guess we wouldn't both intimately know, but you could buy a new car for that.
Well, I
80s.
wish you could buy a car. Oh, back then you could probably buy a house.
Right. That's what I'm like. You could have bought like I don't know, in the 80s, would $12,000 buy you like the nicest decked out truck they had on the lot? I don't know, but I want to make sure the listener, if they're young, is like, oh, $12,000. Wow. What a deal. Like, no, in that time frame, not dismissing that wasn't a deal. It's like, that's a lot of money. Carry on.
Yeah. And to our knowledge, back then, that was the largest transaction for a single deer that had ever happened.
There you go. That quantifies it. And then it rides home in a car.
Yeah. And people thought he was nuts for doing it. But so he comes back and wants to kind of get a second opinion. There's a gentleman named Phil Wright that actually wrote one of the books on BNC scoring, and he was an official BNC scorer. And he happened to work at the University of Montana back then. And so my dad drove the deer over to the university, which a couple hours away from where we lived at the time. And Phil scored it as well and also came up with 346. It was like my dad got like 346 and 6/8, and Phil got 346 and like 3/8. Something like that.
Your dad had to feel good about that.
Yeah. So then there's this whole other element to this where they release a cover story, North American Whitetail with the hole in the horn, saying new world record. BNC did not like that because you're not allowed to declare a world record, only we are. And so they get it officially panel scored. And mind you, during this time, the Missouri Monarch had just come out as the new world record at 333. And he was kind of the pride and joy of a lot of parties involved.
Yeah.
And they didn't like that either. So, but it goes to panel, and they basically dinged him on a symmetry that is there's skeptical thoughts surrounding it either way, but they end up having him have a net non-typical score of 328 and, shorting him of being the world record. The other thing you have to take into consideration is, even if it was a few percent, but think about this deer sitting in that tavern, sitting on the ground for however long it did, then sitting in a smoky tavern for 20 years or 30 years or however long it was. I mean, it's just like the General. I mean, that thing sat in a barn for 8 years, 6 or 8 years after it was found in Nebraska.
Yeah, it was the world record for a long time, whether we have to say it or not.
Yeah.
It was the record for a long time.
But how much did they lose? Like, even if, if let's just say the hole in the horn, was somewhere actually in the upper 340s, and he lost 2 or 3%. The people that have seen what the true shrinkage can do would say, oh yeah, I get it. I get a lot of antler nuts that are like, they don't like that because they're like, a deer's not going to shrink, 2 or 3%. I'm telling you, I've got before and after photos of some deer, they've shrunk more than 3%. It just depends on the the minerals, the climate, where they're stored. It
when
certainly
they were harvested, everything.
Yeah, it's not a hard line rule. It doesn't happen to every one of them, but it does happen to some. And but anyway, long story short, so then goes this whole thing, and to give this story a happy ending, which it did, it's like the hole in the horn becomes number 2 officially. And although he got shorted on number 1, he went on to become the most famous deer out there, and a fan favorite, crowd favorite. He's been featured everywhere. But this is what, once he started at one point in time having the hole in the horn and Wrath and Illinois Roadkill and Elburn Kohler and the Larry Raveling buck, these go into this, what becomes the traveling display that starts going to the Iowa Deer Classic and every other show. And then he got sponsored by like Budweiser and the NRA, and he started booking speaking engagements all over the country, where he would go up and take all these heads, most of which are now in the King of Bucks Museum there in Springfield. But he would take all these, and you'd get to go see all the biggest deer in the world, and he would give seminars and talk about them and tell the stories. And that's where this really started, the storytelling aspect and the concept of, like, back then when North American Whitetail magazine came out, you had one movement that started where all these people that are like, hey, I live in, southern Nebraska, and I've never seen anything other than the deer that I see when I'm out driving to work, and all of a sudden they're getting connected to all the other big deer that are coming out nationwide. And people are like, I didn't even know deer like this existed. And it created some fandom around the deer. Now, cut forward to the traveling and show days, those same people are having a new experience again, where they're going, I could actually go, like, maybe hold that deer and see that deer, and I know everything about it. And that's what kind of started this, like, man, there's value, there's storytelling, there's and so that's what popularized that, like, traveling display, and the value in the sharing it with everyone. I mean, that's, we were talking about Josh earlier, Josh Duncan. The thing I love about Josh when he got the general was, it was like, I just want to be a steward of the deer.
Yep.
I don't want to lock it away in a room somewhere. It means so much to so many people, and it's had an impact on so many different people's lives. It's crazy to say that about a set of antlers, but it has. And we've taken it all over the country and shared it with tens of thousands of people that, I mean, I've seen people cry. I've seen people shake. I've seen people like, I never thought I'd ever get a chance to see this deer in person. And even when other news came out about the general that nobody knew about, first thing he said, he's like, well, it's part of the story. So we tell the story. We can't change the story. It is what it is. And that's the kind of stewardship of the stories, the deer that we're, really advocating for. I love it. I mean, that's the part that needs to be shared. And I'm trying like crazy to continue to add to that, I guess.
I mean, it's such a unique fire to have just this drive, from starting from your dad and continuing to carry through you, this insatiable desire to actually tell the story behind the inches. And dude, I could go, I mean, I got bucks I want to ask you about, and we won't get there today because these are too fun. These are too fun. I could do a 10-hour podcast on each one of these bucks, because that hole in the horn, even just knowing the unknowingness of it, that's just what makes it so amazing. I've got kind of, questions here that I want to get to here, but then there's a few deer I do want to get to. You did mention Fred Goodwin, and you talked about Fred Goodwin on the Seek One podcast. So don't think I'm amazing anyone. I snooped some clips that I did find very interesting. If I have this correct, we're talking about Fred Goodwin being the I guess real OG in your mind of collectors. Did I have this written down correctly? The 1800s even. Yeah,
his collection went back to like the late 1800s. But here, let me set a picture or a stage here for you and the listeners. Imagine today you decide, I want to collect the biggest deer in the world, and I'm going to go find them all starting now. And you get out there and you find out that like nobody else is even trying to collect them. And there's no high dollar value to them that people know of. There's nobody even paying attention. And you run around and you go buy the hole in the horn and the brain buck and all these giants for $200 to $500 a piece and less, depending on the time frame that we're talking about Fred's story. I mean, the guy could go collect and he could just go, oh, this guy over here's got the new state record from, Texas, and he could run down there and go get it. Oh, another giant from Maine was just killed. I'm going to go buy that one. There was no, so what he was able, and I'm not trying to downplay what he did, but what the stage I'm trying to set is to set how incredible his collection was. Not to mention, have you seen that famous black and white truck bed photo with the guy leaned on the truck bed with the giant deer?
Yep.
That's Fred. That's Fred Goodwin. He killed that deer too, the Silver Ridge buck. And so, but right around the North American whitetail days and right before, my dad actually bought Fred's entire collection all in one shot. And there was, I've heard 1,600, I've heard 2,400, I've heard upwards of 3,000 heads and sets in that collection when my dad bought them all at once then. So to kick off a collection pretty strongly, then he went and added the hole in the horn and the Wrath, Illinois roadkill, the Pleskak buck, Montana's non-typical state. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. So you want to talk about one thing that'll make me just about keel over. My dad every once in a while will go, well, what do you think my collection would be worth today if I had been adding to it all the way up till now and had never gotten rid of anything? And I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to.
Yeah. But it's probably fun for him to reminisce, but like, how would you have ever had any way to know? And it's probably not so much the dollar that it matters now. It's the memory and the storytelling and carrying it forward, because to sell it, obviously, you get something like the General in the wrong hands to sell it. I mean, sure. we can go there in a second. I mean, having Josh on the podcast, Josh had a real wild decision to make. Could he have just filed a lawsuit and taken his ball and gone home and just said this was terrible? Or could he shift it and add it into a narrative that makes it even better? Yeah. And I know that there's some stuff going on we'll talk about here in a second that might be, one of the greatest versions of storytelling in your guys' career thus far. I want to jump around here just because there's a few I do want to cover here, sure. Cody, and this doesn't all have to be about deer. So stop me anytime we're going to talk about, if you want to talk less about deer, let's do it. But one that we talked about this a little bit offline, but there's, I think, part of storytelling, and let's even call the hole in the horn buck part of storytelling, and what makes storytelling great is that I think you're a guy that wants to drive to the truth, and you like to drive to the truth, and you like to seek the truth. And we talked about a buck earlier offline that ironically, a guy like CJ Alexander tells a lie long enough that he became famous somewhat, sort of famous because of a lie. And I'm interested. The buck I want to see if you're willing to talk through is this Rampala buck. And I know you've had a lot of, recently he was on the Hunter podcast. If you guys want to hear like a way longer version of kind of some of Cody's thoughts on that, it's there. From what I can understand from you and our conversation offline is that there's been obviously some backlash, but to me, the thing that I guess I would want to give you the table to say on the Rampala buck is, I myself, and probably a ton of my other listeners, I've always had the same questions that I think you've had. I've always had these like, and now there's just so much unknowingness. I know that you've spent a lot of time and carried a lot of weight to try to get to the truth on the Rampala buck. Today, as we record, what are you comfortable saying?
Sure. Well, I'll start off telling you what I like about it.
He says nothing.
Wherever you stand on your stance on the Mitch Rompala bug, I have never seen a story that stood the test of time like this and had such a compelling, give and take in like huge audiences that there's a big crowd that'll die on this hill over here that it's not real. There's a big audience here that say, I'll die on this hill. It's real. He was, shorted for not being named the world record. And the fact that the story has had so much, what's the word? It's like the stories had so much fire for 30 years. That part is mind blowing. So from a storytelling aspect, regardless of the outcome, I've watched.
Are you willing to say, Cody, maybe this is just an easy way to start through any of this. Are you willing to say, if we look at the top line view, does Cody Idol believe the Rompala buck was real?
I'm going to stand, you're not going to love this answer, but I'm going to stand right in the middle for two reasons.
No, that's okay. Because that's okay.
Yeah, but for one, we need more evidence in the public eye. I'm not the gatekeeper on this. This is just my opinion, but it would be like saying, I'm the best NBA basketball player, and people are like, well, show me your stats. And it's like, well, I'm not going to show you. Just trust me.
Right.
And I'm not saying even that Mitch was saying that, but like even the people that support that the deer is real and it's the current world record, it's like, you guys have to understand, you can yell and get hyped all you want, but you can't expect the greater general audience to accept it without evidence and proof. And so they'll say, well, Mitch proved everything that he ever wanted to, or he doesn't have anything to prove to anyone. And that's true. He doesn't have to prove anything to anyone. He's not required to do that.
Well, let me play dumb.
Sure.
Is there physical antlers?
Look, there was originally a story that it burned up in a fire. Later, people ranted and raved, said that didn't happen. I've heard that he still has it. I've had another person tell me that he shipped it somewhere out of state, but here's what I'll say. I've watched 3 or 4 different super compelling, like there's some guys that know way more about the Rompala buck than I do, that took a deep dive into it and provided very compelling cases for it not being real. And then I have stuff like, I had a guy, I won't say his name, that wrote me recently and said, look, I'm telling you, I know them. I've been in the room. I've held it. I've seen it. It's been x-rayed. It is 100% legit. It's real. And basically he said, Mitch is never going to in his lifetime, but apparently his son plans to at some point share it with the world. And I said, and this leads me to the stance of like, look, I'm a big fan of giant deer. I want the deer to be real. I have no reason for me to want it not to be, but I stand in the boat with everybody else. It's like the fan club of the Rompala buck can yell, and they're sometimes pretty awfully like insulting and stuff like that. It's like, you guys can rant, rave, yell, be insulting all you want. But the biggest difference between, the Hansen buck and the Rompala buck is that it's been verified and validated and put in. And if you know how quickly this would change, if it's 100% legit, they walk into a room today with an audience behind ropes that can't come up, they get it x-rayed in front of people, show the x-rays, let someone like Lee Ellis make an episode and tell the story and walk through every step with them. Boom, validated. It would be the world record. It would be
real. It would be real. I mean, it would be legitimate. Yeah.
So it's like they just keep saying, we're never going to do any of that. Just trust me, bro.
Right. And it's like that becomes the problem for me as well. Of course, is like, if it's so real, why wouldn't it be easier to tell the story now? And why wouldn't someone like Cody Idol be helpful in helping tell your story, helping clear that narrative up, helping clear up the confusion? The fact that it hasn't just been x-rayed and substantiated and brought to public settings for people to see is...
Yeah. I would be more than happy to dedicate a whole show, make a whole new film to give it the credit that it's due.
Yep.
If it is, and like, the funny thing is I'm not going to beat around the bush with my words, because I don't think just because there's a kind of vicious circle there that likes to rip on people, I don't give a damn. You guys can say whatever you want. We're all allowed to have an opinion. It's, the people that don't think it's real get attacked by the people that do. And it's like, look, you guys don't get to tell everybody in the whole industry or the whole hunting world that they're not allowed to have an opinion on this. Like, we all can draw our own conclusions. If yours is not the same as mine, that's okay. And the thing is, a lot of times, and I'm not saying, there's plenty of people that just like, oh no, I think the deer's real and they're good people. I'm not saying, but there's plenty that are like, you saying, I don't know if that's real or not. It's like an attack on them or like an attack on Mitch. It's like, I stand in the camp right now. Just show me. I want it to be real. I hope it is. And if it is, I hope it gets the credit that it deserves. If it's not, I'd love to know that too.
Well, yeah. And if it's not, all right, okay, well, let's bear the weight of if it's not. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's a poser tactic. It's falsely been elevated to the status of the hole in the horn, to the status of the general, to the status of real stories. Mm-hmm. If it's not real, that is a big lie. And I would have a hard time. I'm sure you would have an incredibly hard time supporting the fame and the fandom and the eyes that has gotten, and I think even more so, Cody, like, knowing what I know about the story of the general that's going to come out, and all this cinematography and everything that's going to that people, hopefully we get to talk through some of that right here. But knowing all that, like, what better way to clear a story up and tell a real story if we can get to the bottom of things? Let's just get to the bottom of it. I do have one question. I didn't ask you this offline, so you maybe don't have the answer. But what does your dad think of it privately? Like, what does your dad think of the Ron Paula scenario?
Well, you got to understand, back in the day too, they didn't have social media. They didn't have, the only way people exchanged stuff was through like actual photographs they sent in the mail or handwritten letters. He didn't love the look and the layout, and there was some things that didn't make sense to him. But that's, again, he'd say, that's just my opinion. But the same thing back then, it's like they are like, these North American whitetail guys, they're like big buck story out of Michigan. They wanted to write a story. They wanted to,
they're just like the media today. The story doesn't have to be real. It's just a story.
Yeah. And so, to this day, it's funny because I think I'm a more energetic answer than my dad on this topic. But like, if I ask him, he's kind of like, I don't care now. Like, if he's the same as me, it's like, I want it would be incredible if it is. But I'm tired of just, again, the whole, like, take my word for it thing.
Yep.
And, I'll just say one of the things on the Hunter podcast that I got torched for was this whole, my dad, like, getting to handle it back then. And, then the swearing on the other side of the camp that never happened. And I'll leave it at that. It's, I respectfully choose to not convey his side of the story on that, just because it's something shared in private.
Sure.
But, one big indicator for me is the landslide attacks to anyone that tries to shed any light of any sort that's not their narrative. That's not a good sign, and this story kicking
when the greatest storyteller of whitetails can't tell this one, it's got to be problematic when the greatest storyteller can't tell this one. I mean, hey, I love people that hunt Bigfoots, but you've never taken a selfie with them. So if you can't let the greatest storyteller of all great whitetail stories tell it, got to be a problem to me. insert that, that guy dead giveaway.
Yeah. So, yeah. And you know what's crazy from all this? By all measures, have I not been very neutral on this? As far as like, you know, obviously I have no agenda against. I just have an opinion, and I land somewhere in the middle. And there will be people on that from that camp that don't like this. I just posted a super wide. Every wide deer that I post on social media has Rompola. Oh, this can be real, but the Rompola's not. And someone a couple days ago made a comment on there that was like, "Can't wait to see the Rompola buck being held and you having to eat crow." And I'm like, I'm not the poster child for anti.
Right. And you can't either. Like, you can't wait either. Like, I was like,
yeah, me too.
I'll buy everyone dinner so we can all look at it. Correct. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that I think is really become so depressing of the hunting world is very toxic. It's very, it's very divided. That's the word that I think a lot of people would use. And that I think honestly is what's going to be the greatest threat to what you and I worry about, which is, where's this going to go? Where does this go? And your efforts to tell the right stories and to create, organic, great matter out of this is hopefully going to be what helps right the ship, because anyone has access to an IP address and a keyboard, they just become, this chest beater. And I get, the last thing I'll say, because I want to jump to another better. I got a few deer stories that we should jump to, but I mean, in your opinion, like you said something earlier that has really stuck with me, that if Cody has studied this, and if I was to go study it, and I was to really get into the weeds here, and I would intimately respect your ability to study this because you've studied, and so has your dad, a ton of other stuff. Did you say that if someone was to go look at this, that in Michigan, there's how many deer that were entered that were very, very wide, and that Mitch has 2/3 of them or whatever? Like, can you give that stat of just, this is a curiosity point here that's going to further lead to people like, hey, go do your own research. But what did you say that puts this wide buck, scenario at a really odd place in Michigan?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously the biggest feature of the Rompola buck is the width that people argue about. The people in the yes category, he's real, are like one of the wider bucks ever from Michigan. The people that don't agree are like, he's too wide, it looks like he's been manipulated, kind of thing. Take that as you will. But what I had said earlier, and these disclaimer, these are not the hard numbers. They can give or take some. So this is not, but Michigan scoring record book is one of the older record books in the United States. And there are, millions of entries at this point. And the number I had heard was, it was either 5 or 6. There's only been 5 or 6 deer with an inside spread over 25 in all, let's call it 100 plus years
of record book entries in Michigan.
Yep.
Only one of the most rich histories of hunting tradition in the country.
So only 5 or 6 over that 25-inch inside spread.
Okay.
And apparently Mitch had either 3 or 4 of them that were entered. And if you go back, this is from another show that I watched. They had old photos of some of his old deer. They do also have that strange shooting out look, very similar. Again, I'm a neutral party. I'm just sharing what I have observed.
Everyone feel free and go and keyboard warrior this as you want.
Yeah.
And tell us we're wrong.
But statistically, I mean, and there was like a 27 in there and another 26, and they weren't just like 25 and 1/8. That, like, they were significantly over. Yeah. to say that out of millions of entries, there's only been 5, or let's just call it 5. I don't know if it's 5 or 6 that he had half of them. You tell me the statistical probability of that.
Correct. Yeah, we can leave it at that. Yeah, we can leave it at that. I mean, everyone go fire off your data. Just feel free and break the algorithm. Start the keyboard fights in the comments. Ready, set, go. All right, we're going to move to another deer.
If you have information that nobody knows, share it.
Please share it.
We want the information.
Call 711, which is the deer information hotline.
Right.
Another deer I want to go to, just because it's not every day I get to talk to someone who has insider track on some of the most iconic and famous names and deer in the world that we ever get to hear from. And I'm in that same era as you, Cody, where I grew up kind of hearing these murmurings. Tell me about the Milo Hansen buck. I mean, I've heard, I know you've talked about this ad nauseum, so please forgive me. But why was that deer so hard to beat, and give us the story that I'd heard you say, because I haven't studied this one. So you're gonna, I know it's a giant deer, but I haven't studied the backstory of how this thing was killed. I hear it was on a deer drive. Just walk us into this Hansen buck and kind of why was it the pedigree of what everybody was trying to chase in world recordry, if you will, if that's a word.
Yeah. I mean, it's been incredible. It's held the record for a long time. And all kudos to Milo, and obviously respects to his family, and rest in peace. Good for him for getting to carry that mantle for so long. So nothing but respect and love for the deer and the Hansen family. But yeah, deer drive sounds like really like the God was shining a light on him that day, because there were other people on the drive that could
have been the shooter.
Could have been the shooter. And, there was a shot that went through a beam somehow without breaking the beam off, but close, which is one of the reasons that a lot of people get upset about like the Johnny King buck. But what a lot of folks don't know is that was also a beam shot first, but it did break it off, and it broke it into multiple pieces. Those that don't agree with that, I have a picture of it that I have shared on my social media, but it yard sailed it on that side pretty bad. And I could see why BNC would not, even if it was reassembled, it's tough to say this is accurate. Whereas the Hansen buck, apparently there was a crack all the way through, but it fit on naturally the way it was. And so I've heard some folks say, well, that shouldn't have been accepted. And they do have the discerning judgment there, where if you don't have to add material and it naturally fits back on, I don't think it ever fully came off, but yeah, he kills the deer that day. A lot of people,
in what era is this too? Just give me
in the 90s. It was,
okay. That's what I thought. Early 90s?
No, 90. Well, yeah, it might've been 93.
Okay.
Up in Bigger, Saskatchewan. They have a statue of the deer up there. It's pretty cool. But I don't know why it's either 93 or 96, but I think it's 93. But yeah, so he's held the title since then. And as far as the scoring goes, he's just built perfectly to score.
Was that deer ever aged too? I mean, it just always makes me wonder too, what age do we think it was?
I've looked at the antlers in person, and he looks more mature to me than he shows in photographs, because he's big enough that people see he is not as heavy. He's just long. Like, to give you an example, he's got low 30s in total mass measurements. The general has 50. But he's very symmetrical. He's built to score. He doesn't lose a lot. He's got enough mass to add properly, but it's just, if you look at the factors, with there only being, there's still just a handful of deer over that 200-inch mark ever in that net BNC. It's rare air, man. You get anywhere over 200 and you're in really elite territory. And there's just so many. I mean, as we know, there's been so many giants killed that, like the number two non-typical from Montana, one of my favorite deer ever, the Brett Johnson buck. You'll have to see pictures of it, but he's got like his like typical frame. He's got like a 216-inch typical frame on him, but obviously he's got junk. So he was in the 250s, but like he's got a frame that could stack in there with any one of the greats that are but there's just so many factors to get. I mean, even if you think about to get to that big with that much antler growth and not throw any junk or have anything that goes awry, it's just almost counterintuitive to how they grow. It's like if a buck's got these great genetics and they're really going to have a lot of growth, there's usually something, whether it's a couple kickers,
right.
Or
flyers, just whatever.
And here's the other thing. And strangely too, even for the big typicals, there seems to be a window of time. Like let's say they're jumping a lot every year up through like age 4 to 5. Even the big, classical typicals will tend to turn out, if they live long enough, will tend to turn back the other way. Like they could be a big typical at 3, even bigger at 4, a grand typical at 5. But if they live 6, 7, 8, it starts to go the other way.
Yep. And that's why I didn't know if that deer was ever scored, or if or it's not scored, aged, if that deer was ever aged, just to kind of know, what was he? And I don't even know, back then I probably wasn't, I don't know, was that even a thing? Like, did they even send jawbones off or have other ways of doing it? Does anyone have a way of knowing what his age was?
Yeah, they sent stuff off back then. However, the general population didn't care.
Right.
I don't know where this.
There was no mystery to that or curiosity to that at that point. Just huge deer.
Maybe it's because I grew up in a state where I didn't have trail cameras, but it's not a place where you know about big deer throughout the year. And then, hey, no.
This episode's been brought to you by Cody's dog.
What she always does, she comes, sits under here and starts like licking her foot. So all I can hear is this gross licking noise. But the only thing behind what I can see for like a fascination for aging deer are like people trying to pick out target bucks. And, if he's a 3-year-old instead of a 4-year-old, do I give him another year kind of thing?
Right.
That is one category where I am certainly not an expert. But I get asked that about every deer. How old do you think he was? And I'm like, man, that's not the first thing that came to mind when I looked at this deer and dug into the story. And
I think we all have been wired to think that now, because you're right. Mm-hmm. Like that's some kind of a curiosity now. And I think my curiosity for it with some of these great, historic deer would just be the pure curiosity of what if that deer was 3? What if that deer was 3? And it's like, dude, this deer could have been even 40 inches bigger next year. Just that what if of like, are we seeing a genetic expression of this deer at a 3-year-old skeletal frame, at a 4-year-old skeletal frame? Mm-hmm. Who cares? It's a giant deer. Yeah. Who cares? Sure. I think that's probably, if I'm, putting my finger on what is the curiosity behind, all right, well, we all, the whitetail greats tell us that a 5-year-old is fully mature now. Like, and that's when, okay, well then was he 5 or was he 3? Was he 8? And was he 8, and you go the other way. Well, gosh, he could have been 300 the years prior. And we just don't know, like what was he? I think it just kind of adds to that, unknowingness, the mystery. Yeah. Whereas if, he's 3, like, oh, wow, we all may never know what this deer could have been, but.
Well, I think about how different the times were back then too. Like, the story that I had heard was that like, it's like they got the deer and they took the head to this barn and hung it up in the barn and just let the whole town know, like, hey, biggest deer you've ever seen in your life is over there. Go see it. And then they like left.
And that was it. Yeah.
It's like, can you imagine nowadays? Like, we got the new world record. It's in an old barn. Nobody else is there. You go ahead. That thing would
God
be
forbid
gone.
the barn blows over in a storm and crushes the antlers. Yeah, we all just hung out. Didn't know.
Yeah, unfortunately, too, that thing, that would have made it about the first hour and somebody would have drove off with that thing nowadays, unfortunately.
Yep. So here, that's one question I was going to ask you before we jump to a deer that probably no one knows about called the General.
Which one?
Yeah. So do you think today's internet, for Milo Hansen, do you think that it would have been ruined the moment of that deer being killed, and that, do you think it would survive today's internet scrutiny with the question about the hole in the antler and all those things? How do you think that would have played out in today's internet scrutiny?
I certainly think it would have been hotly debated, but the thing that he would have in his favor there is that thing would be so documented right from like moment one.
Yep.
That you couldn't even be mad at him. Like if B and C looked and said, "Hey, we'll accept this even with the hole in the beam."
Yep.
There's no debating. He is what he is.
Right.
And he was very
come see him, to go back to Ron Paula. Come see him.
Mm-hmm. And he traveled with it. I mean, that deer made it to a lot of shows, and it was wide out in the open in the public. So, again, no matter where they land on that versus Rampolla or another deer, it's a world-class deer, and it deserves to be in the conversation no matter what, because it's, again, that rare territory. There's only a small handful of deer that are over 200 net typical. And to give you I know you held the General, to give you a scope on the, side-to-side comparison, like Hansen and General, like the Hansen buck is like 100 on his larger side and 98 on the other. The General is 108 on his larger side and 103 on the other. And to give you, side-by-side comparison, there's only on the whole score sheet, there's only two measurements that Hansen beats the General. And again, I'm not making a plug for this versus that. They're both tremendous deer. But just to give people a scale, circumference measurements mass measurements come out to low 30s for Hansen, 50 inches for the General. The General's got 32-inch plus main beams on both sides, which is super rare. Love him or hate him, there's for whatever reason, I don't know how you can hate a deer, but there are folks out there that just have to have a problem with it. It's it's a doggone giant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In my brain, when I picked up, and maybe we're going here, let's talk about a deer called the General. I do want to know, since you said, Cody, I did not know this tidbit, and shame on Josh for not telling me this in the hours that we've talked, Josh. I will never let you live it down that you didn't tell me that, and maybe you did, I just don't remember, but that your dad named the deer.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody strap in. We're about to talk about the hotly contested, did it have stickers, didn't it, but it did, but it didn't, but it sort of did, the General. We're going to talk about the General, and I held the General. I'll put the pictures up if anybody on YouTube is wanting to watch this. I will put the pictures up. But in my brain, Cody, this is what I was going to try to get at before we jumped into the General. In my brain, you know how your brain quantifies what something's supposed to weigh when you pick it up? It's part of our human nature.
Yeah.
I missed it a mile. When your brain's oh, and then I'm like, oh, it just is baffling to you that I felt and held some really big sheds of, just buddies that are shed hunters and big sheds. And it's not even in the same hemisphere. It doesn't even seem real. And when you look at the pictures that if anyone holds it normal, Josh put them there, put them where this is be about the spread. It's it looks like Jurassic Park. It doesn't even look real. And anyway, you guys are happening to be spending a little bit of time on this. So let's go back. Let's strap in. I want to know, clear back to the beginning if you can. I've heard Josh's, and if you guys haven't listened to my version or Josh's podcast with me about the general and the just incredibly articulate story of the general and its life as we kind of know it and all the pieces of the puzzle. Your dad was an incredible portion of the pieces of the puzzle. So let's hear from Cody's perspective. How did the general happen way back then and before it was the general?
Yeah. Well, first of all, how dare you ask me this an hour and 20 minutes in about a story that we spent 8 months making a film on?
I had to lead up to it. Okay. I have my notes here and it's the third one. Okay. Geesh. I should, I have a guy named Keith Snyder. I'm sure you've heard of her. We might skip that. So I'll give you all the table you need. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, let me actually jump to the name real quick because this is one of those.
You know, I was kidding. We're going to talk about some Keith. So go ahead. Or the
general.
Well,
but I love this because my dad, out of all the stories he's told, we're like already making the general film.
Yeah.
We got all these people around, get to him, and it's like, all right, so why'd you name him the general? And he's this old Southern guy, he's like, well, I can't remember. And we're like, what? Like that, out of all the things he could have said,
Dad.
or like, he was like, oh, I was naming a lot of deer back then. We did all this. We had stories going left and right. I was writing articles and this and that. I'm like, wow. It came all the way to actually getting a major film under production before you're like, yeah, I don't know. I don't remember. Best guess that we have, and I'm sure Josh said this, is that, it's Sargent, Nebraska in Custer County. And it's fitting that he called him the general because the locals called him the Nebraska Giant prior. So what's crazy is he didn't get his name that everybody knows now. He didn't get his name till from 1959 when he was found till, mid 90s. Yeah. When because he wasn't really publicly discovered until that point. So, he was the Nebraska Giant for 30 years horrible quick math. No, we're close there. 30, 35 years.
A long time, whatever that is.
Yeah. So, but just the irony, because I love the build up to that, because I've been asked that before. It's like, here we go. Everybody buckle up.
Earth shattering.
How'd he get his name? And we're like, yeah, we don't know. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but hey, that's even cool too, because obviously everyone expects it's like, what's the sophomore album for the rising biggest country star ever going to be? And it's like, yeah, no, it's just this word. It's going to be barbed wire fence. And it's like, wait, unimpressive. Well, this story wasn't enormous until it was. And so your dad probably had no idea. I'm sure he had some. He chased this like he did, but the weight that would carry into the future,
yeah.
Whatever. So when is Cody's first knowingness of this deer shed antler set? But was it called the general in your childhood, or kind of what's your first recollection of this?
Yeah. Well, so to cut to that part of the story, I would have been, this was like around 96. So I would have been about 9 years old.
Okay.
So,
and if you want to tell it another way, I don't want to chronologically push you way forward.
No.
I think it's cool to kind of know in your childhood, though. You're telling this story so vividly now here in 2026 at 39, you said. When was your first, knowingness of this deer? At what age were you? So you
9.
said 6? 9. Okay.
9, because that was in 90s. So essentially what happened is, now, one cool little tidbit is my dad in this story gets to broker the deal for the general for Cabela's, and I'll tell that part here. But it was the largest transaction ever for a single deer at that point. And then 30 years later from that point, I get to do it, and it's the largest transaction ever for a deer, for the same deer, which was just a kind of just an honor and a blessing to get to see that full circle moment. But essentially what had happened is the deer was in Oklahoma with a guy named Tim Condick, the Sheds. And Cabela's came to my dad and said, hey, we want to do we got a new flagship store we're putting in Owatonna, Minnesota. And we want to have this incredible bronze monument out front that we want you to sculpt. And they said, you pick 2 deer, you can pick them. We want to actually buy the deer themselves and then have you do the sculpture. And so my dad went to Tim, ended up buying the all-in total was $63,000 in like 96. And during that time, he had named him the general. But like once he acquired the general back then, he brought it home with him because he spent the next, year or so sculpting this monument. So we have the general Sheds like sitting in the living room, and I've got old pictures with him, like having him propped up on a sawhorse out in the yard, taking pictures of him and stuff. And so that was really my first. And I think with the deer that we had in the room back then, I thought he's big. And he immediately was like, oh my gosh, that's the general, which was a new name.
They're Sheds, they're Sheds. So I guess, does it make any contrast that some of the deer you probably have in the room are together, mounted, skull plate, everything together?
Yeah. Yeah. It didn't, and of course I was like 9 and, already in my head, I'm like, in my lifetime, I'm going to kill a few deer like the ones in this room. And
or bigger.
Or bigger, probably. If I've got my whole life to hunt, I also thought I was going to play for Duke in basketball back then. I was sure of it. And all the buzzer beaters I hit in the driveway confirmed it for me that like I was destined for Duke one day.
Yep.
Little side fun fact though, I did play college basketball my whole career. I played in about 130 college basketball games in my time.
At NC State.
No, I wish. No, I was not a D1. I went to an NAIA school out west, but
okay. I got NC State. That was your dad's college.
That was my dad. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So where did you play? We're going to give him a plug, a shout out.
Well, it's not even called what it was when I went. It's in Great Falls, Montana. It was called the University of Great Falls back then. It's now called the University of Providence out there, but yeah, it's an NAIA school, and same conference as like, if you've ever heard of like Westminster out of Utah or Lewis and Clark State, some of those that they were in our conference.
Okay.
But yeah, not a big school, but it was fun to play. And I actually played football my freshman year of college too, and basketball the rest of the way. But
okay.
Anyway, where were we going?
We were talking about, I probably derailed you, but you were talking about, as a kid thinking, I'll probably kill some deer this big. And,
oh, yeah. So perception of, but as an art-minded person myself, I have this cool visual in my head that I would like an artist to be able to portray one day, where as a 9-year-old, like looking over my shoulder, looking at the general sitting in this room of giants, but being kind of spotlighted, and then not knowing that this one set of antlers would lead down the road to like making TV shows, the largest transaction in history for a single deer, like making a documentary film. It led to the founding of a company that I'm part owner in. And all this stuff, and it's like, but go back 30 years, and I'm looking, and I'm like, oh, that's a big set of sheds, and it's just a cool. I can't help but put things in a visual format because of like the art space. But
you're a family of visionaries, so that doesn't.
But
that doesn't
tell me, God hasn't just shown off a couple times and been like, look at the irony in my dad naming it and then the controversy, but the controversy not coming out until 40 days after we do the largest transaction. My dad and I had at different times had the largest transaction in history for a single deer with the same deer but like 30 years apart and unrelated. No game plan to that. It organically and naturally found its way back in. I mean, I met Josh Duncan because he called me up from Facebook and was like, hey, I followed you and you seem like the guy to ask. I want to buy the General. Mind you, not something that prior to that I did. It's not like I was like, hey, this is what I do, so hit me up if you want. It's like he called me to ask me to do something that I'd never done before. And then to come to find out the seller wants a price that's also never been done before. I'm like, all right, guys, I'm in the middle of this now. But just like everything that has occurred from it is just unbelievable. And you want to talk about proof and testimony of like the impact that a deer can have in someone's life. To folks who have never been exposed to the whitetail world or the antler world at all, they go, what's the big deal? It's like, that's a hard thing to encapsulate in a short answer. But I mean,
I think you guys are working on encapsulating it in a long form answer.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Are we allowed to, I don't know if I'm the first podcast to know any of this. If we're spoiling anything, we can just keep going here, but are you allowed to talk about kind of what's been going on for the past several months regarding the General?
You mean as far as the story or as far as what we're doing?
Yes.
Well, I mean, it's very well known that, it was last spring, it was spring of 25, that we did do the $1 million deal. And then 40 days to the letter after the $1 million deal, and mind you, in the North American Shed Hunters Club, the General is the world record typical. We come to find out. So another friend of ours, you're probably familiar with Mike Sharuis, the antler collector. After this $1 million deal, in almost like a celebration, he makes a post about the irony that in 25 at the Iowa Deer Classic, 65 years after the sheds were found, a single shed surface that was from the General, and from a separate party, a pair surfaced that was, so it was like a 1961 and a 1963 set that prior to that Iowa Deer Classic 2025, no one even knew about. So there's that whole irony too. So this all happens in 1 year. The $1 million transaction, the single shed surfaces, the new set surfaces, the 63 set, blood, we had them DNA tested, 100% match to the General. And then we do the $1 million transaction again, same year. And then 40 days after that, on the Antler Collector page, Mike posts this kind of tribute to this history and all this stuff that had happened. And very innocently, this guy named, I almost said Ben Barnhart, is Bill Sainer. This guy named Bill Sainer out of Nebraska, old neighbors of Ben Barnhart who found the sheds.
Yep.
Posts a picture and says, hey, this is in Ben's living room. And they were basically taking photos because he knew he was getting ready to sell the sheds. So it's like, let's take some photos with him. Here's an old photo in his living room. We call them the Sainer photos. And there's him sitting there in a chair holding the sheds. And, there's the kicker off the G3 on that side and the G2 on that side. And, Mike Sharuis actually took it down really quick. He was like, what am I looking at? Boom, like took it down. He's like, I'm really confused. Sends it to Josh and goes, hey, I removed this from the page. I don't know how many people saw it or not, but look. Which leads to, I'm getting ready to go to the Caymans with my family, and I'm picking up my daughter from school. I'm actually like sitting in the parking lot out with her in the back seat, and I get a text from Josh. He's like, hey, you got a second? And he calls me, and he goes, hey, and he sounded really like somber and down, and I'm like, immediately I knew something wasn't right. And I said, what's going on? And I hear the, whoop of a picture coming through while I'm on the phone. And I look, and there's that picture. And I'm like, what am I looking at? Like, wait. And immediately my mind's going, is this manipulated? Is this doctored? How is it possible that it's been 65 years, almost 66 years at this point, one of the most famous deer in the world, the $1 million transaction comes out, happens, and then 40 days later, this surfaces. Did someone do this on purpose? Did someone intentionally withhold this information? We know that there were some people that knew. Very few, and it was very tight-lipped, but and then when
and do you have questions of, are you thinking at this point, does Josh think you knew something?
Well, I asked that, I saw online, it's funny, I saw online, I read things about myself that people that I don't know wrote. They're like, yeah, he knew about it.
He always loved those.
I'm like, I'm reading stories about me. I'm like, that's interesting. But here's the thing. Like, other than a select few people, I don't think that anyone knew. And I'm a storyteller. If I had known, I would totally have shared it. And so I never got that serious question from Josh. Like, I don't think that, Josh and I know each other very well, and he trusts me like I trust him. And, that was never a question there. But interestingly, the thing about that moment was like, is it just a piece of irony, crazy irony, that this guy decided to do this at this time? Because the deer had been very well documented, had been featured everywhere. He could have done this anywhere else,
anytime,
any number of times, and never did it. So the timing fell off. But, ultimately Josh flew there, met the guy. He's actually in the film. It's an old Polaroid in an album, and there's an actual timestamp on the photo that says March of 95. And so, maybe you could account for like the older generations starting to use Facebook, Maybe it was like he never did it until it was so easy to just do it from his living room. And it was funny, too. You could tell the innocence in it, because he even took a picture of, he's closer to my dad's age, I think. He took a picture of the picture and posted it on like a thread on Facebook, and didn't know he accidentally took a screenshot, and also screenshot his personal phone number in the picture and posted it in the comments. You're like, this guy was just trying to contribute to a thread he was enjoying. And, but through that, he was able to go out. Josh was able to go out, meet with him. Literally, this guy's son now owns the farmhouse where the general hung and where Ben Barnhart lived. And so they went into the room where the general hung all those years. They went right to the spot where, right around the area where the sheds were found. So what turned out to be a kind of a big dagger to the heart at first turned into another incredible storytelling opportunity. And, really, I joke with my family. I'm like, the kickers being cut off are the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Because, let's say we do the $1 million transaction and, all is hunky dory. Josh and I high five, and it's like, glad you got it. Thanks for working with me. We'd still be friends, but that was it. And what instead happened is like, I prayed about it. I know he did too. And I really was thinking, and as I was praying, like, hey, I just felt for him. I was like, Lord, any way that I can be, like, I pray for his family through this. I pray for him. Any way that I can do something positive or like contribute. I don't know what that could be, but like, I want this all to work out for him. And I just prayed for that situation. And what's crazy is about 3 days later, I was ruminating on it, fall asleep one night, wake up in the middle of the night, and I couldn't help it. I didn't want to call him because it was like 1 a.m. So I sent him a voice memo, and I said, look, this just came over me like nothing I can explain, but he is still the general. And this is a story that needs to be told. And it's just added this whole level of intrigue and what happened and who did it and how do we get here. Like, this just made the story 10 times more interesting. And yes, he's likely going to get kicked out of the record book as number one, but he's still the general. And it's not like, at the end of the day too, it's not like somebody added something. Someone took something away.
Something Josh said that I loved so much is this is not the deer's fault.
Yeah.
It's not the deer's fault. Everybody's mad and there's controversy, and now we're going to minimize the deer. And this is not the deer's fault. God created such an amazing creature that all this is coming from that. Okay, if you guys that are listening and you've listened this far, great. Thank you for sticking with us here. But maybe this is not told yet, and maybe it is, Cody. Are we allowed to talk about there's a publication that's coming out and all that, or is that not public yet?
The film?
Yes, I can cut whatever we need to cut.
No, the film is on blast right now, man. We are promoting the ever living out of it because it's coming out July 4th.
Okay.
So, and it's like 8 months in the making. The film is going to end up probably costing more than the General did to make, but little tidbit about that was so cool. And this is way outside of my realm of experience leading up to this point. But when we did that Seek One episode, we had, become friends with Caleb Copeland and Copeland Productions that makes a lot of the Seek One episodes and other shows, that the new Dude Perfect stuff. And, he's done any of the kind of top tier shows that you'd see on YouTube and on television, like Caleb's had a hand somewhere along the way in a lot of them. They do excellent work. And so anyway, we were very fascinated with what they do. And after the sticker photo stuff came out, Josh and I got together and said, we should tell this story. So we had originally approached, Caleb Copeland and said, hey, let's make a film for YouTube, and we want to tell this story. And we've got a lot of great ideas of how we want to do this. And everybody's all hyped on it. And we're like, yeah, let's do it. That's a great idea. And the buzz surrounding the story was just nuts. So we're like, it's going to be great. So about a week goes by and Caleb reaches out to us in a group text and says, hey, are you guys free for a meeting, like a Zoom meeting? I got someone I want to introduce you to, and there's something we want to run by you. And we're like, okay. So we meet, and this other gentleman is a director and has made films for like Netflix and other big streaming platforms before. And they're like, we think that this story is bigger, and we think there's enough here to take this to the next level. And what we'd like to do is introduce the idea of going for like a streaming platform and making a full-length documentary that's meant for home viewing like that. It does incredibly change the budget, but it scales up the production value and everything that we're going to do. So, this thing went from being like, hopefully a YouTube documentary to we're making a full feature-length film, and there's actors and incredible scenes, and everybody who's had a hand in the general story that's still alive is in the film. But we have, Lee Ellis is in it, Bill and Tyler Jordan are in it, Trent Ellis has a part in it, and my dad's in it, Keith Snyder, all the way back to like Tim Condict, who was, the original broker from back then when my dad got it. There's the kicker story. There's the story of the impossible deal, how it was acquired from Bass Pro.
Yep.
There's the $1 million deal. It has been, to give you an idea of the scale of where we went, like there's an actual old Fed raid story about them looking for the sheds. I don't know how much of that part of the story but the short version is that the law back then in Nebraska was that it was illegal to pick up shed antlers. And that's another thing I missed in the Dick Idol section of the story is supposedly when he wanted to buy the General for Cabela's, supposedly there was a phone call made, and later that week the law was changed and it was no longer illegal to pick up shed antlers in Nebraska. But prior to that, they had been sold. Tim Condict got them from Ben Barnhart, the finder, but he acted as a broker himself and sent the sheds to a guy out in Pennsylvania. And he had them for a while. And then when the deer started to become famous, I think he got cold feet because I think he knew deep down he probably wasn't supposed to have them. So he shipped them back to Tim Condict in Oklahoma, but people had become aware of them, and apparently the authorities were looking for these sheds. And so there's a Fed raid story that we retell, but like in the story, we actually have like an actual SWAT team that kicks in the door to a house and goes in and arrests Tim Condict. And it's just, it scaled up so much. And I say this as someone who also loves film, and not historically as a filmmaker. So I'm saying this as much as of a fan. As a consumer. Yeah. And I'm in the film too, obviously in different portions, but I don't think when you see the cinematography and the different compelling sides to this story and everything involved and it spanning over 67 years, I just don't think, especially in the outdoor space, I don't think anything like this has ever been done. And
I don't either, and I haven't seen it yet, but I have been hearing of what's been going into it. Yeah. And, through some conversations Josh and I have had, and just, I remember we were talking about a farm because I was going to help him find a farm in Ohio. And he literally said, I can't look because this month I have dedicated to everything we're doing with this film. I'm completely inundated with it. I can't do anything at all. I'm out for a month, and it would be, to be that intentional, of course, with a project, knowing that not even just that month was going to take the project, but that this season was going to take the project, and it was going to be the paramount concern. And I'm incredibly excited to see it. I will say the first time he told me that he was going to have like a feature film about these antlers, like when you hear that, you're just like, what does that even mean? Like, yeah, it's a good story, but like, what does that mean? But hearing him say that these antlers changed my life, is not in the meaning of, let's quote the great Tiger King, I will never financially recover from this. No, not that.
Never financially recover from this.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Cody. Not that. You could tell when he said it wasn't about that. It was what has come from this that changed his life. So I cannot wait to see it. I don't want you to spoil it anymore. It's coming out on America's birthday. That was intentional. It's called, what is the movie called?
It's called Antler Craze. And the subheading is America's $1 Million Deer.
Antler Craze coming out July 4th. So is this going to be on Netflix?
So that's getting circled in multiple wagons right now, exactly where, okay. I think one thing that we probably run into on our end, first time making a film, some of these streaming platforms, like if you're a production company that's made 50 films, you can go to them and say, hey, we got this new one coming out, and probably make an agreement before you even get there. There's an element of like, this thing has to be finished for them to be able to make a final. Yep. And I don't blame them for that. We've never made a film before. So my hope, and the one thing I'll go into, I love about the title, I love the broad, we've all done it, whether you're on Netflix or Prime or whatever, and you're scrolling through documentaries and I don't play golf, but the other day I got stuck in the Rory McIlroy new one that just came out. And by the end of it, I was on the edge of my seat and I'm like, if you don't make this putt, I'm like, I don't even know what it means. I don't even know how to keep score, but like I'm stressed. Right. Or I'm watching a guy climbing a mountain with no ropes. And I'm like, I don't know anything about rock climbing, but the hook got me. Yep. So like, the hope is with this title, because if you just said, oh, it's about antlers and stuff, people that aren't in that world already aren't going to watch that. But you see that Antler Craze, America's $1 Million Deer, I think it gets a lot of people to go, wait, what does that mean? What are we talking about here? And the fact that the film is done in almost like a true crime, like whodunit format. Yep. It's such an interesting and compelling story. And boy, it's like it's kind of like if you've ever prepared a speech and you have the two simultaneous feelings of like, I'm nervous. I also just want to get it over with, but I want to do it so that I can enjoy it after. Like, yep. Usually it's like, for me, public speaking goes, I don't want to do it, to like, I enjoyed doing it. And afterwards, I'm glad I did it. That's like so it's like, I'm so excited. And this has nothing to do with the business end of it. I'm so excited just to see what it does and where it takes the deer. And like, as far as I'm concerned, I won't even say where it takes us. It's like, in that regard, it's like the General's got its own wagon. We've just hitched our horse to it. And it's like, I want to tell the story. And so like, where will we go on the next part of the trail with it? Who knows? But it's the biggest project of my life. I've heard Caleb has shared that with us too. Like, this is by far the biggest thing that's happened in my career, filmmaking and stuff. And Josh is like, the General's changed my life. And this is something that, was such a passion project for him. Like, everybody involved has been led by like, this has really like touched our hearts. And, certainly there is business involved in all these things, but it wasn't, we need a business, so let's do the thing. It was like, there's this big, amazing thing, let's properly conduct the business that surrounds it. But like, the focus is the deer and the story, and the legacy of it. So I couldn't be more excited, man. July 4th can't get here soon enough.
Well, I'm making Cody send me the beta version after we get off this podcast. So just everybody, good luck. I won't sell it. I won't even put it in a barn. You can't buy it from me at all. I'll have an underground link. It'll be up on LimeWire, right? Shout out to LimeWire from back in our days.
Shut down computers across the country.
Correct. Yep. I loved that reel, giving our parents computers AIDS back in the 90s just to get the newest Linkin Park CD. So
Dude, I don't know how on LimeWire, I don't know how I had 106 different remixes of the same DMX song, but
and I couldn't find it.
Only half of them were downloaded too. I couldn't get all of them to download.
Yep. I mean, you and I downloaded Sandstorm together, man. It was a big thing. Like we needed to know that we could pull music somehow.
Dude,
man, this is so good. I have more than 3 hours more questions. So what I'm going to demand we do is, Cody, I'm building a barn and I'm building a podcasting setup in the barn, and I'm neck deep in it, and electricians are out there right now and all this stuff. Will you come to Ohio and hang in my barn podcast hang sometime? And you can come hunt deer. You can definitely come hunt deer. We happen to have some good deer here in Ohio still, even though we have baiting. Yeah, even though we have baiting, boo-hoo. But yeah, I'd love to have you in camp. I would love to have you come in and do an in-person, because there could be some incredible storytelling here. But I got a couple rapid fire questions before we wrap this up. I've got that 10,000 foot view question that I gave you before we start that I always like to kind of end with any guest. But before we get to the biggest question, what would you say, in your knowingness of antler stories and all these, what would you call the wildest antler recovery story that maybe people don't know, or maybe they do?
Well, I mean, we certainly have to throw in the Jordan buck. A lot of people know that story, but just, and there's varying stories back in the day of the whole, did he actually fall in the river? How was he recovered? But like, him not having the deer for all those years and getting kind of pulled back in, and then, passing away shortly before he gets recognition and the deer gets named the world record at the time. Man, what would be my favorite?
I got two others, though. These are wild card questions that I think you're going to love. You want me to keep going? Or
Yeah, let them fly. Let me think about which one I want to recovery.
Biggest lie you've ever heard in deer hunting? In the space, any, take it as broad as you want. The biggest lie you ever heard. Can't be the Ron Paula buck. We already went there.
that you have to wear new age camo.
Let's go. Let's go. So what, all right, we got to, to close that loop, what's Cody's normal attire on a mid-November hunt?
Well, I'm like, I'm eating my words now.
Well, I'm with you. I'm a Sitka guy, but it's because it lasts and I wear it and it's comfortable. Like I'm a product guy because I like to tear stuff up. So I like stuff that lasts. Yeah. I mean, I'm not partial to Sitka being the best. Name a good company and I'm good. But
Sure.
But
well,
I agree with you on the camo world.
I have a stack right here of like every pattern and every SKU that Osseo makes.
Yep.
But it's specifically the whitetail stuff. It's actually not even finalized yet, but developed a good friendship with Joe Miles over there, and I think I'm gonna jump in. There you go. I'm gonna
shout out to Osseo. Just give me the rest of my order that I placed at ATA, would you? That's all.
Dude. When I tell you like.
Yeah, dude.
Look at all this stuff.
I got a funny one for you then. You need to use this as blackmail, okay? For Osseo. And then I want to get to my other hot seat question. So the biggest lie, which I agree with him, is that you have to have amazing camo pattern or something. But Osseo is really going to hate that we said that, you know. That's their claim to fame, the patterns. But hey, the stuff's good. Dude, it's Rendell. It has to be Rendell, Eric, or somebody. I think it's Rendell, but anyways, I'm coming through Southern Ohio. This is right before whatever the Ohio Expo show is called. I forget, Sportsman's Show or whatever. I'm coming through Southern Ohio, like the bottom of Ohio by West Virginia. And I look behind me, ironically, I'm like, well, that's an Osseo van. It's a fully wrapped Osseo van, like the Sprinter van. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. They're probably coming up to Columbus for the show. And I live close to Columbus. So I'm like, we're going to like this. Well, I'm speeding up and then they pass me. And then I speed up to stay with them, and it's a 55. It's 55 two-lane the whole way. Dude, we're going 70 like 6. And I'm texting because I don't have anybody's Osseo number because I'm going to blackmail whoever this is. I'm like, bro, this guy's going 80 and a 55 in the Osseo van. I'm calling Terry Peer. I'm just asking anybody that I can, like, does anyone know? Is it Rendell, Eric? Oh, anyway, we never figured out for whoever's actually listening, but they legit were going like 85 at times on getting to Columbus 2 days prior to the show, mind you. This is not like we were in a hurry, but somebody at Osseo, I have questions because I went as hard as I could go to keep up with the Osseo van. Anyways.
They're probably just providing like an overnight delivery to a loyal customer.
Right. Right. Yeah. I was like, someone's cooked here.
Yeah. No, the other thing and this is specifically, prior to Osseo, I hunted in New Zealand last year in some Kuyu stuff, and it worked great for what I was doing, where I was at. Prior to that, I mean, I did from age as whenever I could earliest remember to my early 30s in Montana. It didn't matter the weather either. I had the same, usually actually these old Carhartts and a wool camo jacket and a ball cap that I always wore. And, you know, hunted and harvested stuff most of my life. I accidentally ended up on an episode of Team Realtree in Montana. And the short
That's a great
version,
framing.
yeah. I ran into David Blanton. I was a college kid. I ran into David Blanton in the mountains in Montana when he had drawn the non-resident bighorn sheep tag. And I was elk hunting with a college buddy. And we had eaten lunch on the top of this mountain and looked at like a Boone and Crockett ram while we were eating lunch, you know. And so hiked down the hill, ran into him. Ended up showing them where we saw it, and you know, it was still a hike for them, but like he ended up harvesting the ram, and it was a booner. And he invited me to SHOT Show, and they gave me back then, right, the year it wasn't even out yet. They gave me a full outfit of the new ScentLock Under Armour Realtree stuff in 2011. I think it was coming out in late 11 or 12. So I lost everything but the pants. But so from 2011 all the way up until last year, I rocked those ScentLock Under Armour Realtree pants. Those were my pants. And my friends used to give me such a hard time because I'm not kidding you. I wore like Georgia boots that I had worn the tread off of. pair of wool socks and Georgia boots, and those, and my old, literally a wool jacket that I have a picture of my dad wearing in like 1978 and on a hunt. Until I got too big, I'm a lot larger than my dad. Just we're a similar height, but I think at his like heyday, he was like 190 and I'm like 240. So,
so you didn't get a lot of hand-me-downs.
No, I saved a lot of them. I just can't wear any of them. They're good to look at.
I got another one here. Man, there's so many good ones here, but most underrated giant ever. Most underrated giant deer ever.
Well, I'll give you both sides. Even though he's very recognized, most underrated giant of all for me on the typical side is the Breen buck. Everyone knows where he scores, like, right in the middle of those like handful of deer but I don't even know how to, I actually just said this in a post the other day, but like, I've seen the deer in person, but Josh actually has one of the first like replicas of the Breen. Man, when I tell you they set that deer in your hands, and it's like the eye test and the feel of it is deceiving to even his score as one of the greatest typicals ever. I say he's the biggest holding deer that I've ever held. And that was just the replica. And I'm like, the real antlers are heavier, but it's hard to put into words. On the non-typical side, I'm going to go with the Dell Austin buck, mostly because, everybody knows he's a giant. He's up in the 270s, but he's one of those ones that people get focused. He's got those like teardrop drop tines on both sides that give him that unique look, but he is such a monster.
And you said Dale Austin?
Dell, like Del.
Okay, that's what I was going to make sure of. Dell or Dale? Okay, Dell Austin.
Look him up. When you pull him up, you're going to be like, dang. He's unquestionably a giant, but he's just one of the most unique deer of all time, in my opinion. Ironically, killed just a few years apart and not far down the road from the general. You
think it was related? Probably not, because he's got drops, right? You said?
Oh, yeah, they're very different. And when I say down the road, it was a couple hours. It wasn't like 2 farms over, but and it was, a small handful of years apart. But the reason that it's significant is because the general was found in 1959, presumably, obviously holding those sheds in 58. There wasn't a hunting season in Nebraska for deer until like 57. So there's these like plethora of these giants that came out of the next 5-6 years for this like untouched herd of deer that just had, they lived in the ag field, so they had good feed. They didn't have wolves or bears or mountain lions or they had a low predator pressure and nobody hunting them. They had all the factors. They do get some tough winters out there, but all things considered, they still had feed.
Yep.
So, anyway,
they weren't popularized. I remember Josh talking through that. I had forgotten about them not having hunting seasons, but just that was an area, and correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of known for birds or just kind of known for other hunting. Yeah. Pheasants, right? Pheasants, maybe quail, I think.
Yep, pheasants, quail.
Yeah,
that was kind of the thing.
It just kind of created this perfect, concoction, chemistry, storm, what have you, to create giants.
Yeah.
Man, we could just go down so many roads. It would be so cool to be able to go back to where they believe those sheds were found. And maybe you guys have been really close to where they believe they were found, like really close. Mm-hmm. Like, obviously in that amount of time frame, the landscape has changed, but, what's it like to find a shed that big. You know, it's just like nobody listening to this will likely do that in their lifetime. So,
oh my gosh. Well, and what's cool in the film, the actor playing Ben Barnhart that found him, they went back and reshot him finding him on location where he found him. So you're going to get to see live footage in the film. Like you said, landscape change. It's been 67 years. And so, you know, and I'll say from my own personal experience, one time I loved, the antler collector owns the bath sheds, the Jim bath sheds. And there's been 2 sets found from that deer. It's from Kansas, old Kansas deer. And one side of one of those ones were found by a dog. But both sets are over like 300. It's, you know, you give them a standard spread, they're both over 300. But we actually took the bigger set back to where the sheds were found last time I was out in Kansas, and I took the sheds, the actual bath sheds, and laid them back out there, and like came back just to get a visual, you know, of what it would be like to walk up on a 300-inch deer in the wild. And then of course
insane.
Yeah. And you can see those, like, if, you know, when we're done here, a couple reels ago on my Instagram, I have the antler collector a snippet of him talking to Lee Ellis about, and Lee's holding the bath sheds. But just to give you a visual aspect, they're just incredible. But, and I guess the one that a lot of people are becoming more aware of, but there just aren't the right words. I also recently posted some stuff about this, but the Minnesota Monarch, you know, when you talk about that set, just the sheds weighs almost 11 pounds. And like his larger side is in the 180s, the shed. And the other side is like mid 130s. So he's like a 326 inch to 330 inch deer without a spread added. And he's very well documented where he came from, and the deer was harvested later. So, you know, and he had gone downhill a bunch when he was harvested later, and he was like in the 240s.
I mean, you know, just for the people, like, I have to get spiritual here for a second. Like, whitetails fascinate me from so many aspects, but all animals fascinate me because they just point to a divine creator. There's just no other way to say it, that they all point to a divine creator, and just the genetic anomaly that a naturally occurring, you know, because we have all these ways now that we've screwed up what God created, where we can modify genetics, and we can, and I'm not, you know, screwed up's the wrong word, but you know what I mean, where we go and make it unorganic now, and we can pen raise deer that get what, I don't know, 400s now. I mean, you get, you know,
oh my gosh, I think there was a 600-inch or 700-inch deer in captivity.
So we've proven like we can do it, but he did it. God did it naturally occurring, grew this kind of a giant mythical mega creature. And, you know, what he wanted us to create from it, you know, obviously we'll never know, but I would sure have to be willing to bet that the story that comes out of the general would make God very proud of the ripple effect, like I said early, on what can come from what we all have, you know, mysticized, if that's a word, that we've created this great mystery amongst ourselves of whitetails, and, you know, what's coming from that. I'm just super, super excited to see. And I am positive, without having seen it, everybody, I've not seen this. Okay. They really haven't given me anything, but the kingdom will be expanded because of it. To wrap this thing up, Cody, I guess until another time, let's go way up. You said 10,000 foot view, 20,000 foot view. Let's go like 30, because we happen to know that our dear friend, Mr. Josh, has a jet, and I don't know what the average cruising height of a jet is, but let's say it's 30,000 feet. What's the 30,000 foot view when you step back and, you know, you either literally or just figuratively close your eyes and you think, what do you hope the Idol family name, and what do you hope the Idol family legacy really is when it's all done for you here?
I would say to secure and open, hopefully, a long-lasting door to preserving the legacy, the stories, the history, and making it available for many generations to come. It takes all of us, and I love to say it's we, not me. It goes like him, then we, then me. And that's the only view that can thrive. You know, you talk about the negative side. Mm-hmm. I view the negative layer of all this on social media and all that. When I first started, it seemed daunting. But over time, I've come to view that as like the same barrier to entry that like a new business entrepreneur starts in a new business and starts from ground zero and has to work their way up. There's layers of stuff that there's just no, you can't wish it away. Everybody has to go through it. And when you come to find out, like, if you're LeBron James, he's got a whole side to people that can't stand him, you know, that don't even know him. If you're a pro athlete, there's people that love you. There's people that hate you. If you're a famous actor, actress, same thing. If you start out as a little small business, people are like hating on you starting. If you become one of the top CEOs, they're hating on where you got to. I view that as just a layer that once you kind of get past that layer and you realize that there's bigger things at play. What I've learned from being positive and encouraging and opening doors is that many more people are coming through them, and they're viewing that as like, this is the way that it should be. So it's like, I'm happy for you. If someone gets a big deer, I'm happy for you. You want to tell the story? I'll help you any way I can. If you kill a bigger deer than me, I'm happy for you. I hope you do it again next year. My dad asked me a little while back, because I had this time of like this explosive growth and success on like social media. And he goes, what do you attribute that to? I know some of the things that I like that you're doing, but what is your take on it? And I said, well, Dad, you want to know the best thing about my page is that it's not about me. I mean, you'll see me in it, you'll see me doing things, but it's not about me. And when I first viewed this outdoor space as something that I was looking to kind of like step into, I was like, well, there's no shortage of people that are self-promoting. There's no shortage of people wanting to be the top hunter or kill the biggest deer or be the most notable. There's no shortage of that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you can love it. You can be competitive in that way. But the only thing that drives something there that leads to this negative side is it opens the door for a lot of ego. And then when the amount of money that's in it now, it's like, I need to present something that's brandable so that I can bring in the sponsors and all the things, which leads to social media. And it's like, instead of doing what feeds the history, the stories, contributes to the community, what do I do that gets clicks and views? And as we know, some people have taken that to a far degree where it's like, oh my gosh, you don't do this and post this because you're hurting the rest of us, you know, for clicks and views.
Yep. And I've been accused of that 100%. Yeah, for having guests on, I've been accused of that as well, where it's just like, oh, you just want the clicks. Like, I think if someone wants to tell their story, it doesn't mean that I can't let them tell it. It doesn't mean I subscribe to it, right? It just means that they have it. Just like you've said, people do have opinions. It doesn't make them right or wrong. It makes us, we live in the greatest country in the world, and we're allowed to have them, you know? We're allowed to have them. You care a lot about making sure you do leave an impact, and I can see that, and I appreciate that. Because I struggle with what is my space in this place either, you know, what am I trying to create? And I really, really resonate with land is spiritual for me. And it's where all of my most defining moments have come. It's where all of my most defining moments in life have usually been. That's when it's my greatest joys have been on the land. And some of my greatest sadnesses have been on the land, like, you know, helping clean up my grandpa's equipment so we could have an auction because he had terminal cancer. You know, those kinds of things that have been deep and heavy, but it all comes back to, I feel this enormous responsibility to steward whatever God wants me to do well. And I know that you do as well. I see that.
Truly do. And it's and I feel for you in your, biblically, when God says, like, do not concern yourself with tomorrow, basically, because, today you have stuff to worry about today. And when you're in a space of trying to learn what it all means and where to go, and some of us dive into it deeper than others. I mean, that legacy question has been put in front of me now so much from the outside too, that it's just sparked more in-depth thought, soul searching. And probably the toughest question to me is, now that I have a bigger platform and more reach and a lot more like relationships that I could pull strings and do stuff, or it's like a big question for me is, like, a lot of this up till now has felt like God leading me on a journey where I don't know what tomorrow holds. And as it unfolds, I'm just experiencing it all and trying to make the best light of what he's doing as I go. Now that there is the ability to reach out and pull stuff towards me, how aggressive, how hard do I push for that, or do I do it at all? I mean, I could get on the phone today and add affiliates and sponsors and partnerships and stuff all over the place, but is that what I'm meant to be doing? And I just mentioned the Osseo thing. It's as that one was as organic as it gets. It's like Joe and I had communicated back and forth and kind of bumped into each other virtually for years, knew a lot about each other, and then ended up getting to sit down at the Iowa Deer Classic this year and really have this awesome conversation that wasn't about business. We just like really hit it off and enjoyed each other's company. And then, that led to a later conversation, like, hey, specifically with the whitetail stuff, like, let's talk about it. Yeah. And that wasn't something that I reached out and was like, hey, I want to sponsor. And then, I had one of the nicotine companies, like nicotine pouch companies, send me a bunch of stuff. Cause I like, especially when I'm in the woods, I'll have a Zin or, one of the brands, but I had a company send me a bunch, and I thought about it, and I'm like, because I'm realizing how many more young people view like what I do in my space. I don't know how I feel about, if I was responsible for one young guy getting into something that he could be addicted to for the rest of his life, that just doesn't sit right with me. And I'd rather, so there's choices like that too. And after
I totally get it.
After going to the Iowa Deer Classic this past show, Josh and I both were just blown away about the number of young people. Like, half the show, I mean, I had like 8-year-olds coming up and being like, I saw you on Seek One, and then this is the general, and this is 1959, and then this happened, and you did this and you did that. And then at different times I had like a group of 10, like 15 and 16-year-olds standing in a group, just like asking questions and hanging on every word. And I felt that, like, first of all, it was a very humbling, and like, I'm sitting there in my head going, like, the fact that these people want to hear what I have to say is just, it's just a humbling experience. But then came the second feeling, was the responsibility. It's like, that's why I typically rarely ever like swear, you're not gonna, you're never gonna see me, promoting going out and, drinking a bunch of beer and trying to go hunting, or there's just all these things that happen in the space. But even doing something crazy on the like the ethical front on camera, like for clicks and views, the larger ramifications and implications of that are that, like, somebody out there that's taking notes and following along sees you do it, and it makes it okay, or you've created a culture where it's like, and that's why with the storytelling, it's so important to keep the integrity of the story. In another setting, let's say someone not Josh ends up getting the general, and 40 days later, the sticker pictures come out and they go, well, because of my investment, and the money that I've already got in this, we can't risk the general public knowing about these pictures. So we get them, we lock them in the vault. No one ever gets to know, but the investment value is intact for that. Well, shortly after that, let's say when stuff gets brought out to the light, which inevitably it all does, then the trust is lost forever in the storytelling there, because people go, well, yeah, you say that now, but you
knew
got
it then.
yeah, you got to tell the story, not when it's convenient, but that the storytelling and staying true to it all together. The other thing I can't say enough in this space, if you're not an expert in something, you don't have to be. There's 8 or 10 things in the whitetail space that I know incredibly well. There's a pile of stuff, like I know nothing about, the development of land for cultivation. I grew up spot and stock hunting in Montana. I've never developed a property. I've never farmed anything in my life. I've never grown anything. I don't even know how to plant other than to put seeds in the dirt. That's the only thing I know. So I'm not going to sit. I've gotten feeding questions on podcasts and stuff before where I'm like, I can humbly say, I just don't know. And, man, I'm new. I'm just getting into bow hunting, which would surprise a lot of people, but I have rifle hunted my whole life, and I get bow hunting questions, and I'm like, I've been on a lot of bow hunts, but I'm usually scouting or I'm hunting something else. And I would tell people, like, look, I think that's a great experience that has been somehow saved for my almost, late 30s, early 40s to get to experience for the first time. And now I have, the blessing of a platform and opportunity where I'll get to go do this all over the place and have these new experiences. Like, but I just think that it's okay to not know something. It's okay to, people will sit there and watch, like Lee Ellis, and the guy just gets it done. He kills giants. He's so efficient, but he will openly tell you about the amount of time and energy and effort that goes into a bunch of deer that you're never going to hear about because they don't end up getting him, or they make one zig when they should have zagged, or they make a mistake, or something comes of it. And that makes it real. That's really portraying, if they were to take the route that, like, they don't ever tell you any of the other stuff, but they just show you him just tagging giants, and then each 30-minute episode has a beginning, middle, and an end. That here's the deer, here's the dilemma, and then here's me taking him. That's amazing, but it's just, there's so much more to the story. So without rambling on too much, I think early on, even like when I started doing, kind of getting known as a whitetail guy, dealer, purveyor of history kind of thing, I got thousands upon thousands of messages throughout all my socials about, what do you know about this deer? What can you tell me about this? Do you know any? I'm trying to locate this old deer that no one's heard of in 30 years. I know you're the guy. And it wasn't ego, but I felt an enormous amount of pressure to have the right answer when I first started. And it took me some time to actually go, look, I don't know that one. I've never heard of that deer, And in the early going, it's like, what does that sound like for like Cody Idol to say, I don't know that deer? I mean, I want to be as true and honest as I can be. And the fact is, there's so many deer out there spanning over such a long period of time. Maybe like Rain Man would have been able to remember them all, or know every detail, but there's plenty where, like, there's deer I've held in my hands that I'm like, someone will ask me a question. I'm like, hold on, go back and get my notes. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. It was 61, not 67. And it was, it was 268 and 3/8, not, 2/8.
That's still incredible. I mean, that is all those still incredible. I mean, the thing that even in the earliness of my career of all I do is buy and sell land now, most of it's hunting land. I'm not an agent. We buy land, we make improvements to it, and we sell it. We sell some property as is, but most of the time we're making improvements, trying to make land better for the experience for the hunter to be better. That's, I'm trying to be intentional with everything we do. I already, in my early stage of my career, feel the weight of what you're saying of having to feel like I have all the answers all the time. And it's exhausting. And I get on here and you can see our social clips and people just melee me week in, week out, just like you. Literally, I have a professional relationship with Chris Brackett, and we've had podcasts, and I'm doing some things in Illinois, and Chris is helping. You can only imagine the people that have all the opinions of Chris Brackett and have it all figured out, and they dismiss completely that he's found Jesus and that there's things he's talking through and that he's brutally honest about all these things that he did wrong and where his own life is. But we can't have anyone have a mistake in their life or have any problem in their life or any, hard time in their life that they've learned from or whatever you want to say. Anyone else's skeletons exposed. Can't have that. We all have to be perfect. We all have to have all the answers. We all have to do it right the first time. We can't ever mess anything up. And if we do, shame on you. And it's really exhausting to try and lead from the position that I see you wrestle with, which is that we always have to have it figured out. We always have to have the answer. We always have to know everything. I don't want to know everything. I'm really working daily on I don't know everything. And we had a consultant on last week, a guy, a soil and water conservation guy at a local county office, great guy, young man. And, talking about consulting, and he feels the weight of not knowing all the answers and not being able to be a consultant because he doesn't know the answers of, 700 questions that would come. So do I. It's like these, it's so, and I hear it out of you. Do you know every single deer that ever walked that was a high score? No, you can't. And I fear so much that there's so few guys that tried to lead with authenticity like you are, that the space is getting inundated by the clickbaiters. And that's why I've been so, and again, I get blamed of being one. It's why I've been so leery of sponsors and all that as well, because I don't want to be a puppet. I want to be me. And I think that's who God called us to be, is you. He didn't need another face for a broadhead company. I'm not giving shade to anything, but is Cody's highest and best use to be the face for HS Strut?
Right.
I don't ever feel that way. I don't ever feel like that's what my purpose is. And of course, there's great people and great products that come along the way that I would feel differently about speaking highly of because I use them whether they pay me or not. But it's not who I am. That's not who I am. That's not my story. And anyway, this has been incredibly good. I think it's easy for people to find you on socials. But Cody, if people are looking for you, how do they find Cody Idol on socials?
Sure. Well, the real simple across the board. It's my name. I think Instagram is Cody_Idol. Facebook is Cody Idol. TikTok is Cody Idol, and YouTube are newer. It's a newer channel, but that's where the Idle Hour podcast, which we just released the first episode. We're actually recording episode 2 this afternoon.
Okay.
But brand new. Been wanting to do one for a long time, and but that one's called the Idle Hour, and that's what the channel's called. But socials, it's just my name.
Pretty easy to find you.
Yes, sir.
So the Idle Hour, you guys will have to go check that out. To my listeners, I will definitely be. Are you going to be on all platforms? We can follow on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not there quite yet, but it's coming.
I know the work that takes, so I can't even take any credit. Most of the people that help me, help make that happen. I just get to get on here and ramble. But
yeah, and I'm right behind you in that. I'm going the route of full studio.
Yep.
And I brought on a guy that is now my producer, editor,
Yep.
Everything. And we postponed getting started for a while in lieu of not having a studio. And finally I was like, look, maybe our first, 50 episodes are on Riverside. I don't know, but it's, I'd rather get started
This is
and
my
then
home
expand.
office. That's how it was for us. I said that, we're either just going to do it or we're not. So 62 episodes in our home office, and maybe by episode 100 it'll be in the barn. Who knows? So, who knows?
I will absolutely come out there. I will absolutely come out and do it. I love. That's my favorite thing. I mean, I know I've only gotten to do it a couple times. Like we traveled to WCB, Josh and I actually traveled up to PA and did the Hunter podcast with those guys in studio, which
was a good time.
Yeah, I just there's an element to that that's so cool. But
it is. It is. And were you kind of shell shocked? Let's throw shade at them for a minute. When I pulled up to their place, I'm like, hold up, where even am I? Y'all have like this unbelievable podcast, and there's this room, and it's got to be like in an all glass house on a mountaintop. And then I'm like, hold on a second. But then I pulled in the backside of the parking lot, and I could see feeders, and I was like, okay, all right, we're there now. We're there. But it's just funny what perception, is when you get their studio room is amazing. Like I think it's awesome. It was really cool to be in there and kind of take notes and all that. Yeah. It's just funny when I went to it, like, this is not what I was expecting. So.
Oh man. Well, what's funny, man, is I was only the second or third podcast I ever did, and the first two were, smaller pods that were kind of the experience where they're like, hey, would you want to be on our show? And back then I was like, why? Like, why are you guys even reaching out to me? So to escalate from that to like suddenly I'm flying to Pittsburgh and Jared was picking me up, and I actually stayed at his house and did like a 24-hour turnaround. But it was super cool because I went and did mine in the morning. And TJ Eads and those guys, the Rack Hub guys, were there, and they were filming theirs right after me. So I sat in the back and just like talked trash to them, and like had a bourbon and sat in the back and was like the peanut gallery just off the camera. And
that sounds amazing.
Yeah, so it was like
amazing.
It was the first experience of like, oh man, like it's just fun, and I love the relationship building aspect of it. I love podcast format where real conversations, not pressured or edited or cut up so that you can't, love it or hate it, like or dislike the guest. Like, you get it pretty real, and it's pretty intimate. You can actually get to know someone, which has made me, ever since I've started doing a bunch of podcasts, I can't hardly stand regular TV because it's like,
yeah, you just feel it. It's scripted, and it feels, very plugged and robotic, if you will. And yeah, I've really enjoyed the chance to be able to get to have, especially guests like yourself and people that people know the name. I've been able to have some pretty big guests on, and it's just been fun to ask them things that I think a lot of people wouldn't ask, just because, like, I had Spook Span on a while back, and I talk about, that episode a lot because, well, I'm sure a lot of people think, well, let's ask Spook, 2 hours of questions about how to kill big deer. Well, Spook and I talked more about real estate than deer, and the stories that came out of that. Several people have said, dude, like, no one's going to ask Spook Span how he got into buying land, and how his first farm was 9 hours from his home in Southern Illinois, and how he sold that to buy something bigger, and how that deal went. And that's what we did. And it was like peeling the layers back of the real person, that we all just know the figure. And I'm like, I don't care about the figure. I love the figure. That's great. But I want to know how they got there, or what was I like knowing the pitfalls, the failures, just as much as I do. Oh, great. Your big success, because the failures are what really define people, to get back up and do it again, or they quit, and usually the people that continue to win, they don't quit. They don't have to quit in them. They just keep going. Make Josh pick me up and you up in the jet, and then we'll all go hang. That'd be a good time. Cody, this has been a blast. For everybody who's listened this long, thank you so much for sticking with us. Go check out everything they've got going on. Block your calendar. Plan to put all the blinds down in your house. Yes, have some fireworks. Have a couple beers. Have some hot dogs on 4th of July. Go thank a veteran. Hug them and cry and thank them. But then get in your house and turn on the TV, because your new favorite, Bigger Than the Outdoors movie, is coming out. You heard it first, second or third or fifth, or whatever my podcast is with them telling this. It's happening. It's a thing. I cannot wait. Everybody go check it out. And Cody, thank you for being with us. If you guys want to buy another $1 million set of antlers, give Cody a call. He would be happy to help you do that. Happens to know a little bit about doing that. So, if Josh would like some competition, feel free and reach out. Cody will take your money, help you find the right antlers, and make another movie about it. It's no big deal. It's just a simple thing they're doing over there.
Exactly.
Correct.
All summed it up perfectly.
Correct. That's season 2. They're going to do this every year. So whomever wants to jump in. No, I just can't wait. Can't wait for what you guys have got going on. I'm appreciative of being on here. Shout out to Josh because he said I have to have Cody on here. I have to get Cody on here. Turns out you are pretty cool. So I've enjoyed this. Dude,
yeah, me too, man.
One day we'll get to share camp together, I hope. And I appreciate you being on and listeners for listening this long. We'll see you next week on Legacy Through Land. Peace.
Thanks, guys.
And that's going to wrap up this week's episode. If you're finding value in this content, we'd love to hear from you. It'd mean a lot if you could share with us how this podcast is helping you on your journey and let us know of any topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Be sure to connect with us on all social platforms at Legacy Acres Land Co. and subscribe to stay updated on when new episodes drop. We hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Legacy Through Land podcast, and we'll see you next week.